people that accuse me, the ones who beat me down and bruise me, they hide just out of sight, can't face me in the light. They'll return, but I'll be stronger. Gotta want to dream again, take me where I've never been. I wanna go there, this time I'm not scared. I am unbreakable, it's unmistakable. No one can touch me, nothing can stop me.
Ayun sa nangyaring laban namin sa IPT, tingin ko talaga natalo lang kami ng isang konting-konti lang, which is yung nangyari sa mid. Medyo naatat kasi kami manalo with the BR buffs. Tapos nung game 2, medyo shaky sila. Kasi medyo masakit yung pakiramdam ng isa. Tapos parang feeling ko mas kailangan nila ako sa team. Ngayon, yung laban namin sa Infuse, abangan nyo yun. Yung dati yung ka-team si Calculated, mukhang maganda magiging laban namin. Abangan nyo.
Right, you are, Endless Ace, as we are back for Game 2 of the second matchup for the day for the Garena Pro Gaming Series, powered by Bacchus. Drive your energy, of course. Before anything else, we are going to be your casters for today. Arctic at your service, my friends. And of course, with me is Atlas. What is up, my man?
Of course, just after that first game, like there were a few changes in how the roster was for Infuse. It didn't really work out for them, but I do think for this game, XP will be the one jungling for Infuse. So now everyone's back on their usual roles. We'll see if that changes anything.
Definitely. And, you know, we'll just have to see if it finally works out for Infuse Esports. Maybe XP. Like I mentioned, he is one of the driving forces for the team. Of course, there is our share and win code right there. All you have to do is share the live stream on your Facebook. Make sure it's public, along with that hashtag on your screen right there. And baka kayong pala rin na manalo ng mystery gift.
Yeah, there will be 5 winners for each share and win hashtag and code for each game. So you might get that chance to win that mystery gift for you if you're lucky. So just share away, share the stream with your friends. gaming.youtube.com/phgarena/live. Check also the official PGS FB page for more updates on promos like this on other streams. So just pay attention to all of that. Of course, looking into our schedule, this is the second game for the second match, so we're past the halfway point for today's stream. So that was TNC's first win against Infuse. We're going to see if they will pull off a 2-0 or if Infuse, now that they have XP on their team for this game, will be able to bounce back and get that 1-1.
Yes, indeed. That's going to be a huge jump. If ever TNC manages to get that 2-0 for today, laking jump from 8th place right now, although they're technically tied with Asian Arena, they'll jump all the way to midway actually. Yeah. They'll actually tie with Imperium Pro Team and Infuse Esports and Mineski. So four-way tie.
Huge jump in the points if they get a 2-0. The 3 points is actually so substantial. They need it after getting 0-2'd last week. So something that TNC has to pull the momentum forward and continue their streak. But of course, we'll be seeing how Infuse recovers from their deficit from earlier. So it's definitely going to play out not only the draft, but now the execution. Things are refreshing for Infuse. They will be going for a refresh, a reset of their mindset now that they have the full team up. So we'll be seeing how all that once drafting actually starts. But come to this, from that last game, other than, of course, a lot of the mistakes that they made, what were the ways that Infuse could have gotten back, rather not be put in a position where they had to come back?
Again, it all comes down to the early game. It was just, there were just so many, I wouldn't say mistakes, because by saying mistakes, I wouldn't be able to give proper credit to TNC, because TNC, actually, they were really, really good. I really loved the rotations from Burst early on. That surprise second gank, just a few minutes after that first gank, both very, very successful. So it goes both ways. I wouldn't peg it on just Infuse making mistakes. I'd say it's TNC being very, very proactive, learning from their mistakes, and I feel like Endless Ace, subbing in Endless Ace for Orthros was such a great decision from TNC, because like I mentioned, I preach how Endless Ace is a great player, probably one of the, not just mechanically gifted, but just his general knowledge of the game.
Seems like a lot of the times there he could just flay calculated out of the Elastic Slingshot. But now it is going to be the regular roster for Infuse here with XDXP in the jungle and Envy in mid.
Ooh.
As for the bans, so look at all those bans against Liar. The Ezreal, Zaya, and the Varus ban. On the other hand, Infuse will be banning out the Zac, which is quite effective in that jungle with the stretching strikes. There's so much range on this Elastic Slingshot. The Gragas as well as a Flex ban, and the Karma is actually pretty substantial, very standard. Coming with their first pick, it will be the least prioritized by TNC. On the other hand, Infuse responds with XDXP's Graves, and it might be Pandars or Envy on that Galio.
Yeah, and of course, I'd like to give particular emphasis. It's actually going to be Endless Ace. That'll be going for the mid lane from support to mid real quick. So we'll be subbing in for Haze. And then Orthros will be back on the support. And of course, for Infuse Esports, it's going to be XDXP back for the jungle role. And basically, everything's pretty much standard for Infuse at this point. Starting roster we have right there. But yeah, I mean, oh wow, actually, Janna, not the Janna, but the Severe actually gonna be locked in for TNC right there.
And
so
has the speed boost from the Janna as well, lots of mobility, lots of safety as well with the disengage with the shields coming for TNC. They actually do their full bot lane already, plus your jungler. On the other hand, Infuse goes for one half of their bot lane. Their jungler, as well as this could be a flex between Pandars and Envy, but seems like TNC's read here is that it will be the top lane Galio, because they do ban out the Talia. The Nami will be their ban off. Is still banning out more utility against Liar here.
indeed.
While Infuse goes for the Lulu, which was left open during the entire ban phase. Seems like that's very surprising actually that they would ban the Nami out, but not the Lulu, because these are the usual two support bans we see in every pro game.
Indeed. And well,
Oh,
I'm loving TNC right now. If they lock in that Lux, that is going to be juicy, juicy, juicy.
The cannon as well, like the On the Hunt speed boost combined with that cannon with a slicing maelstrom on, it's gonna be just rushing through. Basically, cannon's just gonna be a purple hedgehog running through, going very fast around the rift. If they do lock it in.
And wow, it looks like that is going to be the lock-in. So yeah, I love the creativity coming from TNC's draft right here. But then again, I mean, for me personally, I've actually considered the viability of Lux, especially with the buffs that they've given her. Those small reworks on the ult.
Plus, the resets are actually very substantial.
So again, it all comes down to creativity of this draft here from TNC, which I'm loving, and at the same time, it's actually very effective if executed correctly. So Infuse definitely has a lot to deal with. But yeah, again, Infuse, looking at the draft that Infuse Esports has, very standard in the sense that it's standard to what you'd expect from them. It's a very expected composition from Infuse Esports. But of course, then again, they do play it to max efficiency. So it's somewhat similar to ACA, wherein they play certain compositions so well, even though it's expected. If they play it to the T, so we'll just have to see if it works out for Infuse.
Yeah, they have so much utility here. Not only from just their bot lanes, just huge amounts of utility. Their damage is also backed up because they have the Graves and the Galio as well as lots of defensive frontline power. While Anivia can actually put down that Glacial Storm is actually so potent in stopping these run it down strats like the Sivir composition. The Crystallize as well coming from the Anivia is actually very potent in stopping any of the charge-in engages that might come from high in the rest of TNC. That's actually one way that they can play around that Sivir composition, but still, once TNC Pro Team gets to you, once they run it down mid, run it down bot, any of the lanes, there's going to be a very dangerous team fight for Infuse to play against.
Definitely. But of course, at the same time, you're going to look at TNC's composition. There's a certain level of coordination that you need in order to make sure that this composition actually works. But knowing TNC, I gotta hand it to them. I'm definitely seeing the growth in comparison to last split. Last split, they were kind of trying to figure out their footing, but for some reason, going into the split, I'm seeing a certain level of maturity. Not 100% there yet, but there's definitely a lot of growth, which is why
It's
I feel like
team puberty or something.
there you go. That's an interesting way to put it. Because yeah, actually, that's exactly what I'm seeing right here. Because now they're able to go for these type of compositions, which actually does require a level of synergy. So let's see how that works out for them.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get right into Game 2 between Infuse Esports and TNC Pro Team here at our Pro Gaming Series. This is going to be the second match. This was also the second game for this match. So we're already halfway through our stream here. So let's see how our teams play out their level 1s.
Oh, yes, indeed. Here we go. So, yeah, I'm looking at the rotations here so far, or where they'll be starting off. So, TNC kind of group. But, yeah, it looks like both junglers might actually be starting off opposite sides of the map. So, it'll actually it'll be interesting how this will translate into ganks past the 3-minute mark, because there will be action across the map here. So, we'll just have to see how this goes.
Yeah, because coming into this matchup between the junglers, XDXP and Burst, Burst on that Elise can actually have a lot more gank potential than XDXP, because look at this. Burst not only has the cocoon for the stun, but Lando and Endless Ace can also set it up for them with a CC that they have, the binds, the stuns from the electricity of Lando. All of that can actually come into very effective high burst ganks. On the other hand, XDXP needs a little more help from his own teammates to go for the ganks here, but I do think that this is actually, I like the composition for Infuse, because Graves is not a high ganking power jungler, the rest of his team can actually compensate for that. They have so much CC available to them that the Graves' lack of CC can actually be mitigated, actually ignored and compensated for.
And now that I look at the composition that Infused has, I actually like this Anivia pick, because if TNC were to go full-on initiate, just one wall, assuming the difference in terrain, because technically at lower levels that wall is pretty narrow.
Yeah.
But during later levels, that's going to be very wide, that it could actually completely halt a full initiation from champions such as Kennen. And yeah, we'll just have to see how that translates. Again, it's both sides a clear level of coordination, but then again, Infuse definitely has the tools to kind of hold off TNC.
They definitely do. Like, imagine once a team fight starts around the jungle, that's a lot of choke points, right? And because let's say he activates the ult, the people that will be in front will be Lando and Burst. And if they get locked away because of the Crystallize, that's like 2 free kills for Infuse, but that's if they time it correctly, and that's if TNC makes the mistake of extending, even with the Sivir ult.
That's actually, yeah. And that being said, it's kind of it's very straightforward in the sense that once those tools are down, that's kind of the go signal in a way for Infuse. But then again, there's so many options with this draft that TNC has, because we're thinking of it straightforward, but there's also the options, of course, you could go for flanks, and
that's true.
All these different ways. Of course, like I mentioned, it's all about the creativity with how you execute this type of composition. And knowing TNC, especially with Endless Ace at the helm, it's a huge possibility that we might actually see some great plays.
Because how you play a Sivir composition is you run them down. You overrun them. You just bull rush them. But it doesn't matter what direction you do it from.
Exactly.
Like, you can do it from behind, from the side. And those are actually more effective, because that means you skip right to their backline, right to Liar, right to Envy, which is actually going to make it so potent here. Burst trying to go for a gank here in mid lane, just chunks Envy down a little bit.
Oh, man. But yeah, I mean, what I'm actually interested in seeing here is that, because during the previous game, there was a clear disconnect, lack of coordination, probably communication was there, but the coordination is definitely lacking. There was a certain lack of synergy. But of course, like I mentioned, XDXP is that key ingredient, which makes Infused Esports actually a great team.
Yeah, he is the chemical XDXP for them. Might actually power Infuse up now that he's here on the jungle role. Looking at his pathing, very efficient actually. Like clearing almost a full clear of his top side, and rotating down. Maybe a chance for a tower dive, but also it gives him an opportunity to counter jungle against Burst, as well as clearing his own Gromp. So it's actually very efficient pathing come from XDXP. Gives him a little bit of a lead over Burst's CS.
And it's actually interesting, because if you're going to look at how Infuse is playing this, like the vision that was kind of lacking, as well as the restraint, the control, it's something that we're actually seeing here finally in the first few minutes. And that was actually a problem that they had, which actually allowed Burst all these very successful ganks, easy peasy in a way. So there we go, another attempt right here. But then again, the lane is so pushed out here that Pandarts is just going to control this.
Yeah, he just has to recall and get his Raptor camp. It has pawned there, so He has to reset his pathing down there, but he was going for a little gank there in top lane, but as you said, it's a little bit too pushed out. I think the most vulnerable ones to gank here are going to be Envy, because Anivia is a very low mobility champion, can easily gank that once the flash is burned. The cleanse is already burned on the side of because of Endless Ace here, so that might be a possibility to go for a repeat gank here. The flash is still up, however, so they have to be mindful of that.
There we go. And let's go ahead and check out these rotations here. So if you're going to look at both sides, XDXB kind of leaning towards this top side. Again, it's very opposite because of how both sides started it. Ooh.
Burst gets spotted out there.
That's actually a very, very good... That's a lot of information, actually. So Liar and Sachi, it actually grants them that opportunity. They know that they need to kind of restrain themselves a little because Burst is lingering towards that side.
That's not the only information that the Hawkshot gives. Because of Liar's positioning there and the angle of that Hawkshot, it actually gives the rest of Infused the lowdown on the rest of his camps, rest of Burst's camps. Which ones are up, which ones aren't. Because that Hawkshot revealed every single camp in the jungle in TNC. And there they found, okay, Gromp's up, Gromp is not up, and Wolves is up. So they know where he's going to path. And that's one of the powers of Ashe in the AD carry role, is that it's not just the damage, it's not just the kiting, it's not just the enchanted crystal arrow, it's also the Hawkshot, which can actually give a lot of information over the jungler's pathing.
Indeed, and with that information, it not only gives them that instant precaution, but within the minutes to come, like Infuse's esports is pretty much covered, and that being said, it gives them all the opportunity to kind of think ahead as to what plays they could go for within the next minutes, knowing where Burst predictably may be because of these camps cleared.
And they're definitely playing a little bit safer, as you said. XDXB also really power farming up to level 5, almost reaching level 6 here. 38 CS, that's a lot more over Burst. Ooh. So that might be a little odd. Look at all of that Burst coming from, well, Burst. Sachi has to get away. First Blood actually goes too high. Liar can't do anything but try and shoot them down, but doesn't have enough damage quite yet.
Indeed, indeed. This is actually interesting for bot lane of Infused. They kind of find them... It's actually... Again, this is probably because of Burst knowing his role quite well, able to determine which angles to go for as far as when he goes for ganks. Like,
yeah, but I don't know why they lingered around that long and why he face checked that. Like, that first brush in the bot lane was actually they did not have vision over that, so they should have expected that Burst might be going for a lane gank, because from the Hawkshot earlier, they should have expected that Burst will be around bot side at around that time. And them dying there, Sachi dying there just makes that entire Hawkshot information almost useless.
I think that's the interesting thing. This is where mind games find a play in, wherein if you're going to put yourself in the shoes of TNC, thinking in the shoes of Infused Esports, like, you'd kind of expect that since I was caught out, the natural inclination might be that Elise would kind of figure out a route to go elsewhere. So it's kind of going for the obvious, thinking that Infuse might assume that the Elise would go towards a different side.
A sort of like, I know that you know that
exactly.
I know.
It's kind of like crazy mind games.
but unfortunately, TNC did just play it exactly how it should be. Like, you cannot sacrifice your pathing as a jungler just to, okay, I got revealed, I have to go somewhere else. No, Burst had to clear around that bot side still. And in the end, it actually paid off for him to stick to his own pathing. Here comes Burst for another repeat gank here. Enchanted Crystal Arrow hits onto Burst, but they're still cornered against the wall. The Monsoon will actually not help them out a lot. Now it's going to be Sachi. Now on the run. That is quite possibly 4 members down their bot lane. Still Infused, losing another kill there in the bot lane.
I'm actually quite surprised. Infused Esports quite extended. I mean, this is a similar trend. Like, Burst goes for these doubles. But that being said, they were somewhat extended at the same time. They didn't have any vision.
That's true.
So it's kind of a habit. It's a bad habit that TNC is capitalizing on its bot lane, because it did happen during the previous game. Like, side-by-side ganks from Burst in that bot lane. It happened again. So
might be in trouble though. It's going to be XD, XB, and Envy trying to go for this. It's going to be a 4v4, but Burst is very low with no mana. Pandars, misses the taunt flash there. And Burst just flashes out. We'll see. Oh, the laser! The final spark actually takes out not only the Mountain Drake, but XD, XP as well. 2 for 1. gives Lando a lot of time there to push in the top lane, but here comes Pandars with a teleport.
Oh man, double rewarding indeed for TNC right there. They're just having a great time, I'd say. From game 1 to game 2, definitely working in their favor. But yeah, it's still very much still early though. Infused Esports definitely has the room to make things happen. But yeah, one thing that I'm actually surprised by is I'm actually seeing a lack of proactivity in a way from XDXP. I mean,
That's true.
It actually makes sense because one of the styles that we've seen from XDXP or from Infused Esports is that sometimes when he's running the Graves, what they actually do is just so that he could farm up, get as much farm as he can, they establish a level of vision so that he could comfortably farm. Not
Yeah,
only
just
that,
power farm.
exactly, without worrying about other lanes getting ganked because they do have that presence, that information by establishing that vision. But that's something that's somewhat lacking, especially in the bot lane.
Even with a hawk shot, there's not enough wards around the immediate vicinity that they leave themselves open to burst. And if they're going for XDXP just power farming and then carrying late game, because this is a composition that wants to scale. The Ashe doesn't really deal a lot in the early game. The Anivia needs to stack up his own tier of the goddess, so there's not a lot of damage there. XDXP himself has a lot of damage potential, but he still needs to scale up. He is still an 80 carry after all. The Graves is still a marksman, so this is a pretty slow scaling composition. It seems like TNC is still taking advantage of it so well with Burst repeat ganking the bot lane to make sure that the Sivir can actually reach his power spike faster, and in turn, this can snowball into more Sivir, just run it down with On the Hunt, and just completely demolish Infuse, and they have to stop the bleeding.
Exactly. And that being said, I'm actually surprised that Infuse in a way, they didn't make all the proactive movements to realize that. And that being said, it's actually quite tricky for them. And here we go. So this is actually very classic Infuse Esports right now, getting some deep vision on in, which technically I was expecting earlier on.
Yeah, they should have done that way earlier.
Exactly.
Now it's kind of a bit late because now Hai has a kill and 2 assists, so already has the BF sword, already halfway through the call. It's going to be difficult, more difficult for Infused bot lane to catch up here. But if they can make a good play with XDXP leading the charge, there's a good possibility that they can actually get back. Here, that deep ward saved them because Burst was going for another repeat. Well, for a repeat gank for the bot lane. And because of that deep vision that they established, and they should have established it earlier, they are saved. But you already got cut. You already bled like, I don't know, a pint of blood.
Exactly. And this is the tricky part here. Like Infused Esports, it's somewhat a trend at this point that they kind of rely on transcending into the later parts of the game if they couldn't really make things happen earlier on. So if this is, again, they kind of need to shake it up a bit because eventually other teams that watch their games, they're going to catch on to that same strategy that they run. So they kind of need to shake it up. Not only to shake it up, but of course, they need to make those proactive movements. Like once they do shake it up, they, like for the early game for the bot lane, like I mentioned, the vision was lacking in first game. Second game, same trend, which actually allowed Burst to just, it's the same thing happening. So even with XDXP, so it's not really much of an issue with
how their roster was last game.
Exactly. It's more of making these proactive steps individually.
Like
and as a team. It goes both ways.
Like both the macro and the individual choices of these
Exactly.
players actually leading to how TNC has a 2,000 gold lead over here. And looking at how the lanes are playing, it seems like Endless Ace did not get the blue buff that Burst was trying to get. Because there was a blue buff trade happening there. If Endless Ace got the blue buff on Infuse side, well, meanwhile Burst could only give it onto either Pandars or to himself. It's actually in favor of TNC if they got that trade. Even though it's a 1-for-1 blue trade, if Endless Ace got that, it's much more effective for TNC.
Indeed.
It seems like it's just going to XDXP for a little bit of experience and gold.
But yeah, that being said, I mean, I guess in a way TNC, with that blue buff on the least, they'll just continue the trend of the pressure because if you're going to look at it, we don't really see any plays coming from Infuse where they're kind of grouped up, when they transition together. But ooh,
Yeah, that's
like
gonna be
Pandar's actually
Lando.
going for the
It's a
trade.
little bit of a trade-off. He actually activates his Slicing Maelstrom here, but it's not doing too much damage against Pandars, who is a natural magic damage tank, who also has the Ninja Tabis. But Lando has the itemization advantage, already has Wits, and has the Vampiric Scepter as well, so has to back off from that fight.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. And there we go. So, again, Infuse, I'm kind of waiting for them to pick up the slack because we're not really seeing as much. Sure, once XDXP does get farmed up, that'll actually be very good for him. But the tricky part here is that Infuse Esports doesn't want to wait for that moment to a point wherein, again, because TNC is at 3 kills right now, not a single kill for Infuse just yet. So they don't want to let it transition to a point wherein they want to start get things going when it's a little bit too late. And that was kind of what happened in game 1. So
oh dear, XDXP might be in a little bit of trouble here. And he, as you said, they really don't want to. Okay, it's a 3-man gank onto XDXP here, but here comes Pandars for the save. Actually finds out there are 3 members here. Actually, a lot of damage blocked away by the hero's entrance, but that's too much burst coming from, well, Burst and Endless Ace.
The puns. Unintentional, actually, but still, they just keep on coming naturally with that IGN.
Comes naturally with that IGN. Plus, he's on Thunderlord's Decree on an Elise.
But yeah, it looks like they'll be transitioning that into a Rift Herald.
That is so good. Like, when you're ahead 3,000 gold in the early game and you get the Rift Herald, and you get another gank coming from Burst, that's going to be a very potent Rift Herald indeed once it's summoned.
Indeed. Oh, there we go. And looks like they will be handing it over to... I believe they gave it to Endless Ace, if I'm not mistaken. We're
going to see once the camera pans back to them, but here in the bot lane, a little bit of a, you know, the usual trades down there bot lane. They can't afford to really go all in just yet, even though High already has the Essence Reaver. Liar as well has reached his own spike in terms of the... Yeah, they do actually give it off to Endless Ace.
Interesting.
Just waiting for a right moment to get it out.
I feel like that's the interesting thing. It's actually very telling of TNC how they think ahead. Because by giving Endless Ace that Rift Herald, it means that they're going to eventually start something in that mid lane. You know, they're going to wait for that right moment. So it's actually interesting. Again, the maturity from TNC that we're seeing right now.
Oh dear, that is so sudden. Coming from Burst, already going on to Pandars. Diving with Lando, very successful. Now XDXP gonna try and make something happen here in the bot lane too. 3 members going on to High. The Monsoon actually pushes them away, and that's gonna be a win onto TNC.
Great play by Arthros right there, really maximizing, getting the full knockup on that Howling Gale. But looks like Infuse Esports will be transitioning this into a Dragon. Not exactly...
The Cloud Drake, yeah, it's not as valuable as the Rift Herald. I really like how they put the Rift Herald onto Endless Ace, because he has the one with the most wave clear on TNC side other than the bot lane. And here they're going to summon it here with 3 members. Lots of wave clear, a lot of power compared to Pandars and XDXP. So it's very dangerous for him to actually linger around here. He goes for the taunt, but that might be just too much. A lot of bursts onto it, and he still charges in with a Justice Punch. He takes out Pandars. Now he's coming to XDXP and Envy. Going to block it out with a Crystallize probably. The collateral damage takes him out, but the damage has been done to this turret. Not the best use, I'd say, but it still did bait out the teleport come from Pandars, and it gives a kill onto TNC as well.
If anything, it only increases their resolve and the lead as well that they have. And, I mean, it's just so tricky. I'm actually quite surprised, but then again, it all comes down to the decisiveness that TNC is exhibiting right now. Because of how decisive they are, along with the plays that they're making one step ahead of Infused Esports every single time. And it's just really working in their favor at this point.
There's a lot of decisiveness, but I do think that Endless Ace should have held on to the Eye of the Rift Herald a little longer. Because imagine this, Envy is always going to push in because, you know, Anivia naturally wants to push in with a Glacial Storm and just stack up his tier as well as level up fast with his Rod of Ages. So if Endless Ace had held on to it longer, the Empowered Recall in the mid lane is actually so potent in not letting your turret be damaged too much, not letting your waves be damaged too much.
Indeed.
But they did use it, not to its full effect. They didn't get any turrets out of it, even though the turret did go down to like 10% health.
Yeah, not to mention that.
Still a win.
I guess they were kind of anticipating that perhaps they would be able to deal with Pandars instantly. It's just that it took a while to take him down. Like, if had Pandars went down a little bit earlier, I feel like that would have been a turret for them as well. But because that wasn't the case, maybe they overestimated Pandars' survivability in a sense. So as a result, you know, it took so long that it came to a point where it just allowed members of Infused Esports to respond. So
it seems like Lando looking to finish the job here, but a little bit of safety. He doesn't have too much vision there in the topside jungle. So a little loop-de-loop around that topside with the Krugs to make sure that no one's around to gank him. but Burst is not going to come. Enchanted Crystal Arrow actually misses by a mile, but so does the Cocoon from Burst, but that's going to be 3 members taking down this bot lane turret. XDXP, quick drawing into his own jungle, just clears Romp. Got the Pandars against Lando. He's doing a lot of DPS, healing himself up with a lifesteal as well. So this means that Pandars has to move away, has to rotate away. Unless he wants to get taken down, he can potentially be dove here. But Envy and XDXP around the wings.
A lot of confidence here coming from Lando here. And yeah, I guess it's not surprising because they can't really deal with Lando right now. Like, even though they might go for the proactive initiate, but looks like another story is being told here in this mid lane.
Dear. The flash clutch coming from Envy dodges death from the final spark. But this is still the mid lane turret under duress. High and Orthros have transitioned to the mid lane with a small lead that they've accumulated over Liar. They are in a position to do so. Lando going to join his team as well. Possibly, or might just go back top lane. Because this is going to be very difficult for Infuse. Because once TNC goes in with a Sivir composition, there's little that they can do. Even because TNC is quite ahead, they can't really afford to stop the charge, even with a Crystallize, even with the Enchanted Crystal Arrow and the Wild Growth. It's difficult.
Exactly, and they're kind of in that position right now because, again, with that lead that they have, they're kind of on that side wherein they could kind of commit to these plays, and Infuse really has to look out for that, and they really want. Again, it's interesting because it's somewhat of a similar trend wherein TNC gets so ahead earlier on, they get all these objectives and this lead that they have right now. So, again, I don't know, man. Infuse Esports, they just kind of need to hold off a bit, try to establish, slowly build off of small victories, and then transition from there.
The thing is, though, that even if they hold off and try and let XDXP and Liar scale up, as you said earlier, the worry is that because they leave XDXP to power farm so much instead of ganking or counter ganking a lot, once they actually start grouping up and team fighting with XDXP at his power spike, the rest of TNC might actually just overpower them because they already have accumulated a substantial lead.
Exactly.
Now, yeah, Infuse is a powder keg right now in that they can be XDXP power farming can make them or break them, and right now it seems to be just breaking them because even with his power farming, Burst is not that behind in terms of the CS.
And ultimately, it all comes down to what they should have been doing proactively within the first few minutes. They're allowing themselves, I wouldn't say confidence, but there's just too much reliability on hoping that they could transition into the later parts of the game. But the problem is, because TNC is so decisive within the earlier parts, it kind of denies Infuse Esports that opportunity to work with their composition and work with the natural strengths that it has going into the mid-late game. But
now they're just getting choked out by TNC. They don't have a reliable means to engage. Like Infuse, okay, that might be the on hunt. That's going to be running it down with a Lux and a Sivir, but they get knocked away, scared away rather, by the hero's entrance. Still gets the spell shield against that Flash Frost, but now Pandars doesn't really have follow-up, has to move away with Lando closing in on that top lane turret. They have to respond to that.
I think what's interesting with TNC's composition is that if you notice, like, once Infuse Esports, once that hero's entrance is used, all these different tools, Enchanted Crystal Arrow, everything said and done, it doesn't really leave Infuse Esports with as many options.
That's true.
As for TNC, like, sure, their initial initiate could get cancelled out, but because Endless Ace is running this Lux, they still have that plan B wherein they still have all that poke from a long range. So there's just so many things that TNC, again, like I mentioned, it all comes down to the creativity of this composition with what you can do with having these champions.
Yeah, and TNC seems to be pulling it off that quite well, because Infuse, even if you have the hero's entrance to deter the on the hunt initiation, because of the speed boost, they can actually just straight up run out of the AoE of the hero's entrance and then go back in with Lando leading the charge with that electric surge plus the slicing maelstrom and the lightning rush. So it's still so difficult for Infuse to disengage because they don't have a reliable way of doing it. Even the hero's entrance takes a while. It's not that instant, so they don't have a way of disengaging. Aside for Enchanted Crystal Arrow, which is still quite unreliable, and Liar has been missing a lot of these crucial Enchanted Crystal Arrows in the past few fights.
Indeed.
So it's very troubling for Infuse and this actually leads them to have a 10k deficit against TNC. Like 5 turrets to 0 is huge in terms of the objective game.
And the problem is, like, you could definitely say that all hope is technically not lost for Infuse. It's just that when you're going up against a team like TNC, wherein as a team, not only are they decisive, but the fact that they're running this type of composition wherein you kind of need to dictate the flow, you know, you have to go for these heavy initiates. It's just so hard to make a comeback from that, wherein you're trying to stall a game against a composition that just could go head on. Like, again, there's just so many options with this composition that TNC has. And Infuse at this point, unless they kind of need to hope for hiccups from TNC in order to come back. But so long as TNC is so decisive in making these plays, it's just very hard for Infuse.
Yeah, and XP stuck between a rock and a hard place, dodges the cocoon quite well, but contesting for this Raptor camp still gets taken away by Burst. That is going to be the final spark against XP, but the redemption just means all of the poke against Burst and Endless Ace are for naught. So now that XP has to recall and back off while the rest of TNC closes in on their turrets.
And you know what the tricky part is? Even though Infuse actually manages to get a target with the Enchanted Crystal Arrow, because of the threat of Endless Ace, like once they go in, it's just so tricky for them to follow up on whatever pickoffs they could potentially get.
Because they've been waiting all this time to make these proactive plays, but now that TNC's 10,000 gold ahead, any proactive play that they make will just be their doom.
Exactly.
So they should have made these proactive plays, trying to go onto Endless Ace and Burst long ago.
In all fairness to Infuse Esports, this could potentially be a learning experience. Again, we're looking at a new team. So these are, again, like I mentioned, there are these hiccups that teams could concur going into the PGS. What actually matters is that whether or not you could actually distinguish those mistakes, figure out how to fix them, maybe like whether it need be, maybe you need to shake up your compositions, or
their playstyle could also need some work here, because if XP, oh, that is going to be a dead Sachi, even with Wild Growth.
And that's going to be the cooldown for Endless Ace right there. He's just having a ball on the Lux right now. And again, one of the worrying trends here for Infuse Esports is that, like I mentioned, this composition that they're running, it's actually an expected composition from Infuse Esports.
Yes.
One of the compositions that got them to the PGS. It's a similar trend to Asian Arena, where they have these signature compositions which really works for them, that they know how to work to a team. But then again, what the problem is, once you head into the PGS, you need a lot more flexibility. You can't keep running these same compositions over and over and over again. And that's the ultimate test for Infuse, right? For Infuse Esports right here, getting out of this situation where they can't be a one-trick pony.
Yeah, and the composition is honestly fine. It's just that the way that they played their early game is that they left XP to do his own thing in the jungle, and it's actually showing in his CS. 150 is huge at this point when you're a jungler that's behind. Total of 8,300, that's not bad. But now, because of all of the idle like dilly-dallying in the early game, let TNC and Burst make all these proactive plays, control how the game is played, and now Infuse, they're a composition that wants to scale up, but now at this point of the game, they're gonna catch up to TNC in terms of scaling at like what, 50 minutes. So if you're running a composition that wants to scale up later in the game with Anivia, Graves, and Ashe, you have to make proactive plays. You don't have to be super aggressive.
Exactly.
But you still have to make these proactive plays.
And, you know, sometimes the proactivity, it's not necessarily... I mean, I kind of see what they were going for. Like, if they don't want to be proactive in the earlier phase, sure. But the problem is, what was lacking is, if you're not going to be proactive, you need to establish that vision.
Yeah, that's true.
Which was lacking. So, I'm actually surprised because, again, my mind goes back to the PGS promotionals. We are looking at the first seed coming out of the promotionals right now, and one of the reasons why they were able to decisively take down Asian Arena for that first seed was because of their proactivity with vision. They knew that they were up against a jungler which is heavy on the roam, could really dictate the flow if he gets things going, and they denied that by establishing solid vision. And along with that solid vision, it's the same strategy wherein they get XP to power farm until the mid game where he actually has enough itemization to just go full on. But again, I'm actually surprised that it all comes down to, I know Infuse Esports could take these proactive measures to work with what strategy they're doing, but in this game, it's evidently lacking.
Yeah,
And
the vision was definitely what hurt them. They let High get these kills and assists. They let Burst kind of get all of these ganks onto the bot lane. It's definitely a huge pain for Infuse that they weren't able to get that. And once they started establishing vision, the bot lane was kind of over. And that's when High and Orthros already started roaming around. I think it's also because top lane had a lot of trouble. Like, the ranged Kennen, who is going AD against Pandars on that Galio, it's actually a huge pain. And because XP wasn't ganking him as much as he should have or he could have, that means that Lando had all the free time to get a 350 CS plus all of that pressure top lane.
indeed, and oh no.
Yeah, Liar will be trying to go for that DPS against Burst. He's not feeling a lot though, and High is just DPSing, staying his ground, even under the Glacial Storm. Gets taken down at last, however. Burst gonna try and run away, flashes, but still gets taken away by Lando, by Envy. But in the top lane, Lando got a solo kill against Pandars, which leaves him open with a Baron buff to take away this inhibitor. And all that effort by Infuse to defend their bot lane, kind of wasted.
Oh man, this is like I'm having flashbacks of the previous TNC. You know, this is very classic Lando, going for the split push, doesn't give a care in the world if anybody goes up against him because he knows he can mow him down. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely working very effectively for TNC. Very classic, but very, very effective. So let's go ahead and check out what happened here. So it's actually Infused. Finally, we see some level of proactivity from them. So they actually go for this initiate. High actually takes down XP though, but in exchange, fortunately, Envy and Liar here were able to turn the tides. Actually manages to get Burst as well. So again, we do see some constellations of kills, but like I mentioned, the question in my mind is contributing to the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Does it translate to anything to getting back into this game? Not exactly.
Because they had a lot of shutdowns there, of course. But the problem was, it was a 3-for-2 with TNC getting an inhibitor top lane. That's actually more worth it for TNC. Because at the end of the day, they're still miles ahead of Infuse in terms of gold, plus they have an inhibitor. So it's just going to make Pandar's job much harder than the top lane defending, and also leaves Lando more free now to split push that bot lane. He still has his teleport as well, so if a fight happens, TNC is still in favor here.
Oh man, and with TNC right now, they don't even need the Baron buff right now. They're just wearing Infuse out.
Oh dear, Lando though.
Not...
Yeah, he has a
actually,
QSS.
oh, okay, there you go. That's right. So yeah, I mean, at this point, like I mentioned, let's see that damage.
Yeah, and all of that damage, even with a Crystallize, that still leaves High with so much damage against that turret, already chunking it down to half health, and now XP has to move away. And look at Lando dealing so much damage. The pressure of TNC closing into Infuse Esports is so potent that Infuse can do nothing except stand back and watch the turrets fall and do everything they can to try and defend. But look at all of that poke and damage coming from Endless Ace. The tankiest member on Infuse gets chunked half health by just one rotation coming from Endless Ace. And wow, look at Lando doing that 1v3 brave fight there over the inhibitor, which leaves the rest of TNC open to engage onto Infuse, taking out Pandars. And they're continuing the siege onto these inhibitors. That's 3 inhibitors going down, 3 nails in Infuse's coffin. We're going to see if TNC can close out their game. They're taking out lots of wave clear here. The redemption as well to just top off their HP. Look at the rest of Infuse just bleeding from all the poke that TNC has, and all the while High has been pushing these turrets.
Oh,
wow.
And it looks like that is going to be the game. TNC finishing it strong, getting back into the game. 2-0 for this matchup. TNC, congratulations.
Quite decisive coming from TNC.
And man, oh man, I mean, quite the comeback. Of course, that does put TNC ranks higher back into the game.
Now they're 3 points, actually tied to Imperial Pro Team, who will be having a match later. But discussing that game that just finished, it's just Infuse has been making the same mistakes that they were in the previous game. So I guess it's established that XP not being there wasn't a problem. It was just kind of a hole, like a problem with a hole.
And let's go ahead and check out the stats here. Of course, positive stats all around for TNC. I gotta commend Envy though, 4-0-0 for Anivia. But then again, it all comes down to that point where we say over and over again, not one player alone just couldn't cut it to carry the entire team. It has to be a collaborative effort, most especially when you're in the PGS right now.
And the vision was definitely something that prevented Liar from really scaling up. Because even with all of the time spent, look at his damage here. It's not quite huge. Cannot even match, just barely over the damage of Burst here. And if he had stayed alive in his lane a lot more, he would have been able to scale up better.
Indeed. And I mean, again, like you mentioned, there's just so many things that Infuse Esports needs to adjust. But then again, like I mentioned, they are a new team, so this is the true test for, especially for new teams going into the PGS. All the mistakes that you concur, you know your once you determine your weaknesses, what really makes a great team is if you're able to kind of fix it in a way and come back stronger during your next match.
There's still a lot of room for growth.
Definitely.
But they do have that potential. But yeah, I think the biggest thing they have to pay attention to is how they play the early game.
Especially,
but other than
definitely.
that, I think they have a lot of potential.
It all comes down to when you're going for a strategy, you need to establish the groundwork, and that's what was definitely lacking.
And when to use that strategy.
There you go. So, of course, ladies and gents, that is the conclusion to our second matchup for today. Congratulations once again to TNC, of course. When we come back, it is going to be Imperium Pro Team versus Acclaim
I've been
Empire
waiting
X.
for this.
Oh man, it's the rivalry rekindled from last year's Rampage, actually. So we'll just have to see how that goes. Of course, we have been your casters, Arctic at your service, along with Atlas. This is the Garena Pro Gaming Series, powered by Bacchus. Drive your energy. We will be right back.
DPS against Burst is not doing a lot though. And High is just DPSing, staying his ground, even under the Glacial Storm. Gets taken down at last, however. Burst gonna try and run away, flashes, but still gets taken away by Lando, by Indy. All the while, High has been pushing these turrets. Wow.
And it looks like that is going to be the game. TNC finishing it strong, getting back into the game 2-0 for this matchup. TNC, congratulations.
Quite decisive coming from TNC.